Hello and welcome to CIO UK Leadership Live. I'm Doug Drinkwater, I'm the editor of CIO UK, and I'm joined today by Kate Warner, who's a CDIO at Alder Hey Hospital and Liverpool Heart and Chest Hospital as well. Kate, thanks for joining me.
Hi Doug, it's great to be here. Really delighted to see you today.
Fantastic. So over the next half an hour or so, we're going to tackle a few things. We're going to tackle Kate's 20-year career in health and social care. We're going to look at what digital transformation looks like in the NHS, not least at the moment in a rather tricky 2023. We're also going to look at the importance of role modelling and being part of the community and that actively contributing towards that. And finally, last but by no means least, as many of you who watched Leadership Live will know, I do try and ask a couple of off-the-wall questions at the end to find out a bit more who we're speaking to today. So Kate is ready and prepped for that, I'm sure.
I can't wait.
I mean, Kate, I guess a question to start off with. I'm always curious to people's backgrounds, how they get into technology. And we know many people who actually become quite senior fall into technology via a myriad of different ways. And I think I'd like to start with how a music graduate starts out and then ends up in a 20-year career now in very senior health and social roles in Liverpool.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Doug. So I would start by saying completely and utterly by accident. So it was never part of a grand plan for me. I actually started I dipped my toe in the water with the NHS in between school and university. So I was waiting to go and start my music degree in Liverpool. And I did a 3-month stint at the Royal Liverpool University Hospitals as a ward clerk. And my job in those days was to essentially go around the hospital and collect paper case notes, the irony in that, given the role that I do now, for patients that were coming in. Fast forward a couple of years, I actually got a job working in primary care during my degree. And my job then was to summarise some of the paper notes onto the computer systems. And then when I graduated, I got given an opportunity to apply for a job as an IT trainer. And I think actually that was one of my favourite jobs in my career, because I got to talk to people quite a lot, and I really liked that. And I also got to share my learning and my knowledge with folk. And so I did this job around training for some period of time. I was really lucky to get an opportunity to do a master's degree, which I did quite early on in my career in health informatics, and got a taste of the role technology can play in improving services in the NHS, and then developed my career from there. Really did a few roles around project management, program management, and then it went into sort of more general digital management roles. I've worked across a number of settings. So as I say, I've worked in primary care. I've also worked in commissioning organisations. I've worked in sort of regional roles, and then also in providers. And I started my role as Chief Digital and Information Officer at Alder Hey just 4 years ago. Prior to that, doing various other roles in different places. And actually, it's one of the best moves that I've made. I really love my job, and then what a privilege it was to be asked really to then take on a role across Liverpool Heart and Chest as well. So it's a bit of a potted history there, but yeah, a career completely by accident, but with real passion, I think, for the difference what we do makes to patients and staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to come on to those two roles a little bit later in terms of how you balance the kind of priorities and how you keep the ship, I guess, kind of sailing in the right direction. But before I come on to that, I do want to, looking at your career going back kind of 20 or so years, how do you think the NHS and social care has changed? And I'm also curious how you think the role of a technology leader has changed with that too, because, you know, speaking to a number of CIOs in the NHS, certainly over the last 5 years, there's been quite dramatic changes in terms of influence and accountability.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I think in terms of how technology's changed, certainly over my career, massively. As I said earlier, really, one of my first jobs was going around collecting paper case notes, and in a lot of NHS organisations now, certainly the two that I work in, it's we don't see much paper around anymore. So I think in terms of the role of electronic patient records in supporting doctors and nurses to care for patients and have information information at their fingertips. That's been a real foundation block really for the delivery of care. I think one of the key priorities for the NHS is really being, delivering safe care and delivering really great quality care. And I think, there's various parts of technology that can really support and enable that. Some of that is around the electronic records, but then there's other things, automation, different types of technologies that can really support that delivery. And then I think, COVID was a absolutely tragic in so many ways, but I think in terms of the digital agenda, I think globally, but certainly in health services, I think probably it gave the NHS the bit of an impetus and boot that it needed to really transform. And I think that the game changed significantly then, particularly in terms of how we interact with our patients and how we work corporately as well. So I think quite a range of things. I think in terms of how the role of the technology leader has changed, I think certainly when I started out, a lot of technology leaders were technologists or IT folk that could plug a yellow wire into a yellow socket, or it would know a purple wire should go into whatever colour socket. And I think actually as technology has evolved and the agenda has evolved, it's much more around how we transform services and how we work with people. So I think in terms of, from a leadership point of view, it's how we work with each other, how we bring people on a journey, how we inspire and motivate colleagues to get behind a vision and then get some stuff done and deliver. So I think it's probably a different skill set. I think one of the things that has changed quite significantly in the NHS is then the leadership position of some chief digital and information officers. So quite a number of NHS organisations now have these roles as part of the leadership of the organisation, whereas I think previously they might have sat under a finance director or another executive director. I think lots of organisations now have a CDIO at that sort of leadership table, which I think is pretty consistent with some industry, and I know you'll be more familiar with me, Doug, but I think that's been another key development in the leadership in the NHS, which I think again just portrays really the importance of this agenda in the now, but also in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Andy Callow, who's just moved on from Northamptonshire, has been a big kind of advocate, I guess, of that, of trying to drive better representation basically on boards from that kind of CIO level. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think certainly from my perspective, it's helpful because you feel the pain of the rest of your colleagues, and you feel the benefit as well, actually, the real opportunity. But you'll know what might be keeping your chief operating officer awake at night. You'll know what, it might be troubling your chief nurse, or you'll know what the priorities of medical director is, because you are part of the team working alongside them. So there's no dilution of message. But then equally, your role there is to then, really raise the profile of the opportunity of digital and technology, and to make sure that we are at the forefront of doing things. And I think particularly working in the trusts I work in, the really innovative organisations. One of them works with children, and so a children's organisation, the expectation of our children and young people is, well, why aren't you doing all this in this way? So we've got a role there to really lead that agenda and respond to their needs and their wants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the key word there, Kate, which is interesting, which we may come on to later, is balance. I guess is how you do all of this, given restrictions and limitations rather on resources. But I mean, that brings me quite nicely to your dual role. I do want to spend some time. I'm looking at your core responsibility, your remit, and I think you're leading both trusts. It's iDigital, I think, is the term for the team, right? That's the under one roof.
Yeah, that's right. So iDigital is essentially our integrated digital service, which is here to serve both organisations. And so my role in that is the Chief Digital Information Officer, and sit on both board of directors. So sit on the board at Alder Hey and I sit on the board at Liverpool Heart and Chest. And then we've got an integrated leadership team that sits across both organisations. So this service has been established for just under 2 years now. And was born out of an opportunity of collaboration, which was explored between a number of organisations in Liverpool. And certainly the leadership teams of Alder Hey and Liverpool Heart and Chest, we're really keen to say, how can we draw some of our expertise together? How can we have economies of scale? How can we pool our resources to then be able to manage key person dependencies, key resilience risks, but also how can we spread brilliant practice? So if we've done something fantastic in one organisation, how can we roll that out and spread that learning, and vice versa as well? So we've been on quite a journey with bringing some of the teams together. And as I say, we've got a shared leadership team, and then some teams which are integrated together, and some which are site specific. So depending on the nature of the work, it will depend on sort of how those teams run. But I think this has been a big success in terms of collaboration for both organisations. Our staff, are brilliant, and they're such a credit to both trusts, and do such a brilliant job really for our colleagues and for our patients as well.
Yeah, I guess that integration is key, isn't it, in terms of making sure that the senior leadership team is across it, but the team as well. Because I guess where I was going is, where a scale obviously is an obvious benefit in terms of what you can achieve and you can learn off each other, but what have the kind of challenges been? Have there been challenges in terms of prioritization, almost deciding what you do first and what you have to park? What do you kind of see as the opportunities, but also the challenges you've run into?
Yeah, so I think one of our brilliant things with this is how the outside of digital, the leadership teams of both organisations are really behind this. So I think in terms of prioritisation, we've got a really great supportive group, governance group that meets, hears the developments that we're doing within the service, but also holds us to account on delivery. I think some of the challenges can be when we've got a prioritisation of something in one place and the same in another. It can be a little bit, okay, how do we balance off some of that? But I think, working really pragmatically with great relationships is one of the ingredients for success there, really. And I think one of our key things which we've really worked hard at is the culture, and how we work with our colleagues, how we get staff to be really heard in terms of shaping the service. So when the concept of the service of collaboration was progressed a number of years ago, iDigital as a brand didn't exist. We, the staff came up with that, and we had quite a cute little logo and stuff which was developed. But that came from within, and we work really hard in terms of communication. Giving staff the opportunity to get together, to get time together. So colleagues, we've got about 160 staff in the service. So colleagues that might not, their paths might not normally cross in a working day. We bring them together a couple of times a year to have some fun, have some laughs, and actually, do some really creative team development work. Additionally, really, we do quite a bit of, every week we get everyone together for a quick teams meeting. There's a bit of reward and recognition, sharing what's going on across both organisations and within the service, and then putting spotlights on different teams to be able to share with their colleagues, what they're up to and the difference that their work makes to patients. So I think that's been one of the real successes in the development of iDigital, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, where I want to go next actually is very much on that vein of bringing people together. I was going to ask you, in terms of your leadership, what do you kind of define as your key characteristics and qualities? Because I'm going to almost speak for you in part at this point, because obviously last year we had the CI 100, and I think one thing that stood out for me was a number of people, not in the same trust, but in the same network of healthcare CIOs who kind of highlighted you as someone that was in the community, actively collaborating, cooperating with others. And I guess if you apply that same model internally, which it sounds like you are, and bringing teams together, that shared vision, I guess, becomes a lot easier, right? If you can bring people with you, you can tell a story, it's easier to bring people with you than if you don't.
It's massively important. And, I think one of the most important things to remember with this, actually, and I'm referring to an old colleague of mine who always used to say, we're in a relationship business here. You know, the nature of everything we do is driven by the relationships that we have and we form. And actually, you know, if you've got a good idea, but you've got no relationships and therefore no people backing your idea, well, your idea is going to go nowhere, is it? Whereas if you've got great relationships and you can build trust and you can build empowerment, and then really, you know, unleash people to be their very best in their roles. You're onto a winning formula there, I would say. And I think in terms of communities and the external networks, it's massively important to me. And I think in terms of these roles are difficult roles, and actually that support of peers and colleagues and others across, whether it be a local geography, a national geography, an international geography, you know, sort of that commonality of purpose, and just being able to pick the phone up and say, oh, you couldn't help me out with this, could you? Or you know, vice versa, if someone else needs some help with something. You know, I think that that community of friends and colleagues helping each other it's just crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's cross-sector, right? I mean, I've spoken to a number of CIOs in different sectors, including recently some that have moved into first-time CIO positions. And I think it's a lonely role, because you're maybe part of the board, but you may then just disperse to deliver what you need to deliver, but you can't have the same relationship with your team. So those networks are very invaluable, really.
Absolutely. And I think as well, to the sort of tech leadership, you know, how that has changed. I think this is probably a really key thematic area around those relationships and those networks. And I would say, you know, I am never afraid to ask for help. So if there's something I'm worried about or something I'm struggling with, I'll pick the black book up and think, right, who can I ring about this? And whether it might be a personal challenge or it might be a work challenge, but whatever it might be, it's sort of, you're really using the network you've got around you to help you work things through.
Absolutely. Does that feed also into you know, your own development as well as a leader? I know you mentioned the masters earlier, but if you've got mentors or sponsors, people that can help you, I'm just curious as how have you looked for inspiration to develop yourself and also develop your teams as well, right? Because you've got to take them with you as you progress into new roles and new skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of mentoring and coaching, and I have a mentor and a coach, and I've had both for a long period, different people at different parts of my career. I was recommended to get a mentor quite early on in my career, and I think it's paid dividends, really. And I think the role of the mentor for me it changes depending where I am. So if I'm starting a new job, actually it might be on the job. Oh my God, I've got this challenge, how do I deal with this? Or I always think it's like someone a bit older and wiser on the t-shirt a few more times than me to help. But then sometimes it might be, you know, if you're given opportunities or given, you know, choices to make, it's someone to help you work some of that through as well. So I've always been really fortunate in all of the mentors I've had previously, and certainly my current mentor as well. But I think it can go a bit deeper than that. And I always think the network I've got around me. So I've got a great pool of informal mentors, and some of that might be, you know, support from exec colleagues in both organisations. Some of it might be, you know, some of the CIO community, and it's massively important. And as I say, for me, it's just never be frightened to say I need a bit of help or I'm struggling with this. I try and really invoke that with all of my team as well. I actively encourage all of my senior management team to have mentorship and coaching. It's a big priority. So across the Northwest, we've got a skills development network, which is a professional network for digital professionals. And it's one of the key things which is recommended through that process as well. So certainly I'm a big advocate of that, and delighted to actually mentor some folk as well. And I think with that, you know, you get a reverse set of benefits as well, because you can always learn from others, as well as you know, hopefully pass on some of your experience and support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw that coincidentally with the Next CIO program we ran last year. A number of mentors saying actually they were learning off of the mentees who are coming through in these different roles. There's a kind of a benefit for both parties, really.
Massively. And I think they say every day's a school day. And I think actually, you know, if you're in such a privileged position to be able to to mentor someone or then get mentored. I think it most definitely is a two-way process.
Definitely. Kate, I guess that all sounds very positive. Where I'm going to go next is perhaps less positive in the light of the news at the moment, given some of the constraints that the NHS is under in terms of costs, strikes, and waiting times as well. I guess one thing I'm curious about is, we read the news, we know kind of face value what the problems are, but how does that reflect on digital and technology teams? What's the impact? I guess I'm always curious I guess you probably have to deliver more with less. It could be one possible outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough in the NHS at the moment. I think it is challenging. I think coming out of the last few years of the pandemic, I think we're seeing quite a lot of fatigue in the workplace, and obviously, you talk about the strikes and other things. It's unprecedented times again for the NHS. I think in terms of technology and digital, so there's a constrained financial environment, but I think there's a real recognition actually of the role technology and digital can make and is making in supporting the future. So the role of a number of things around, I don't know, declunking repetitive processes, saving time, supporting productivity, supporting efficiency. So I think that there's a real recognition around investing in technology to release some of those benefits. I think one of the challenges is then how can you really turn some of those benefits into hard cash?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't, and I think you've got to be okay with that. Sometimes you can, and that's great. I think it's then, how do you help with safety and actually the wider consequences on people's lives, on mortality, and on quality improvements in outcomes for patient care. I think in digital, I think one of the challenges we've really started to see is around recruitment and retention. And again, it's probably not unique to digital in the health service, but I think it is a challenge that we're seeing more so now than we perhaps did a little bit before the pandemic. And I think some of that, there's been a lot of national investment, so everyone's sort of fishing in the same pool for resource and staff. And I think this is where models such as iDigital can help, because we've got those economies of scale. But I think it's where collaboration then with other places is really critical to help to alleviate some of that, because I think that is a real challenge at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking of digital, one thing we are also seeing at the moment is the centralisation of a lot of the leadership. I think we're speaking either today or yesterday where NHS Digital was folded into NHS England's Improvement. NHSX has undergone a similar exercise, if you want to call it that, on the back of the Wade Gary review, I think last year. And obviously Simon Bolton is also departing as well. What do all of these changes mean, I guess, locally for kind of independent trust CIOs? In many ways, you could say that there's more collaboration than there's ever been, but obviously there'll be some challenges that come with this as well.
I'm actually really quite optimistic about the changes. I think one of the things we've seen change fairly significantly in the last year or so with NHS England is the real connection with local organisations. So there's a CIO touch base which happens weekly, which is chaired by Sonia Patel, which I think is a great group for everyone to get together and hear right from the top of the shop what's happening. So it's a really lively group and really helpful. So I think the organisational changes, I'm hopeful that it might become a little bit more streamlined, because I think to sort of manoeuvre through, a number of different national digital organisations and then different people with different interests sat in those organisations, I think bringing all of that together a little bit more strategically should hopefully help, both in terms of strategy direction, but also then in terms of that connection with local organisations, because you sort of have a funnel through a single route rather than through multiple routes is my hope for it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll come on to some of your initiatives as well, but you mentioned earlier about digital culture and the importance of establishing a kind of a digital culture. How have you approached that out of interest? Because I think there are some examples in terms of drop-in centres, digital champions, a kind of business partnership model I think you've established as well. What's the secret sauce, I guess, to establishing digital culture? Because change is always hard, isn't it? And people in particular are hard to change. So how have you gone about that?
Yeah, so I think there's something around brand and communications and engagement. And I think really getting the right type of person to go and work with frontline teams, divisional teams, getting our clinicians really involved. So we've got quite a lot of doctors, nurses, allied health professionals who are working as part of the digital team. So actually they're embedded in their clinical teams, but also they're embedded in digital as well. And I think in terms of the culture, that really helps with us knowing why we do what we do, and it's all about our patients and it's all about our staff. So it helps to create that culture, but keep the thing really grounded as well. So I would say that there's some of the ingredients, but I think also then putting some of our digital professionals in with those teams. So if we're thinking about any service changes, if we're thinking about new strategies and transformation, you're getting those folk in and out and around those services, seeing how they work, seeing what the opportunities are, seeing what the challenges are, working with them. And really importantly, delivering, because I think that you can have the best strategy in the world and people can get behind it, but actually if you don't deliver and you don't show results and you don't listen, you're on a hiding to nothing really. So I think they would be some of my suggestions. And I think, and I said the word before, I think there's something around keeping some of it a bit fun and lighthearted, because I just think you don't come to work to not have a good day, do you? You come to work to have a smile, have a little bit of a laugh, have a little bit of a joke. And I think there's something in terms of the culture of keeping really optimistic and really spirited and positive around the changes that we're doing, even when things are hard.
Yeah, no, and that sense of together, I guess that builds that sense of togetherness, doesn't it? In terms
of definitely.
Yeah, interesting points about, we hear another sector as well of cross-functional teams working together, IT being, or digital teams being less of a silo, much more embedded in what the organisation is trying to achieve. But as you say, you've, as many CIO tells me, you have to get the basics right to earn that voice to do more.
You do, and I think I'm always very keen to get out and about as much as I can. So drop into various clinical areas. I think I'm also the exec buddy for a number of clinical areas, sort of not from a digital point of view, but from a wider exec point of view. And so I'm always curious really to see, how things are feeling on the ground. And, if there's things, we've got some of our technical colleagues who do, they do daily ward rounds, so they're out and about across both organisations, just trying to proactively pick up any challenges for staff. But really encourage that with the leadership team as well. Walking a few steps in other people's shoes can really then show how great something is, or things that we need to sort out. And again, I think it's not afraid to say, sorry, we've got that wrong, but we'll fix it. Because I think showing some, humility and not making excuses when something's gone a little bit wrong, but just sort of facing up to it and saying, we're really sorry that we didn't get that right this time. But, give us a chance and we'll fix it is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Humility and vulnerability, I guess, is part of that, being yourself, in terms of who you bring to work. Coming towards the end, Kate, before we go into those two slightly kind of off the wall questions, but obviously various initiatives that you've worked on last year. I think going paperless, the adoption of electronic patient records. I think you're doing some interesting stuff in telemedicine and AI and automation. Which one kind of stands out for you? Which are you most proud of over the last year?
Oh gosh,
can you pick one?
Well, I think so one of the things which we've done in both organisations is go on a journey around international accreditation. So there's something called HIMSS, which is a global digital accreditation for health services. And this it's not been very widely adopted in the NHS for various reasons. And I think the NHS has been largely behind other countries globally in terms of the digital adoption, particularly in the acute provider sector. And for me, this global standard is all around how technology can help you deliver great care, great outcomes, safe care. And so we've been on a journey with both trusts around HIMSS, and we got the highest level of HIMSS in Alder Hey last year, so HIMSS level 7, and then we got the second highest level in Liverpool Heart and Chest, HIMSS level 6. Actually, it was the year before last. I forgot we're in a new year now. Anyway, and we're on the journey for HIMSS level 7 at Heart and Chest this year. So I think to have a integrated team which delivered these two major global accreditations, it was just a huge success for the team, really, and our team are fantastic. But then I think what really stood out for me during that process was just the difference this work was making to our clinical staff and to our patients, and the improvements to people's lives. And again, that's why we do this stuff every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And some interesting projects, actually, your pilots you're working on. I think one of which was asthma mapping in young children.
Yeah. And what was really interesting in that, so during COVID, because obviously everyone was inside, there was no cars on the road, so the A&E attendances and the illness of respiratory illness in children during that period just absolutely plummeted. And obviously now we've come out of it all, and they've all been incubated for a while. We've had the worst winter ever around respiratory illness. So, but I think using some of our data, using some of our AI tools, I think that's really helped us predict and be able to help shape some of our services.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Kate, the final two questions for you. We're going to go into a bit more about you as an individual, I guess. First of all, I'm going to leave. There's a question around music I'm going to come on to, but I guess the first one was if you were starting again career-wise, would you still choose technology, and why? And if you didn't, what would you choose?
I think I probably would, actually. I do enjoy this. I think I love the wider leadership elements of it, and as you've probably spotted, the people elements of this, which I think is not just about technology. Actually, it could be transferable to others. I think if I was to choose something else, I wouldn't mind a bit of travel, actually. So I could see myself, you see these programs on the telly, don't they, where they basically get paid to go and like check out a nice hotel in like the Maldives or Barbados or somewhere. I think if I was to have a go all over again, that mightn't be a bad shout, but with the reality on the ground is probably less likely. And I think I'd definitely choose health again. I think I'm really passionate. My mum's a nurse, my auntie's a nurse, so I think really passionate about the health element of what we do.
Yeah, fantastic. And then I guess finally, talk me through you musician by trade. I believe that you're the chair of a wind orchestra and also a saxophonist. So just talk me through what you do to keep busy outside the day job, if you have any time at all.
Yeah, so I play flute, piano, and saxophone. So played flute and piano since I was a child, and as I think mentioned earlier, did my degree in music, and then I actually only took the saxophone up after I'd done my degree, which was a bit weird. I joined the McGull Wind Orchestra in a few years after I finished university, and now that's the orchestra that I chair. And it's a great group, and again, it's all about community. It's a community orchestra, and our ethos is any age, any ability, no fee. And we are around about 100 odd members, and our youngest members have been as young as 8, and our oldest is as old as like sort of between 80 and 90 at various points. And it brings a real sense of togetherness, of a set of people who would never normally get in a room together, real eclectic, different backgrounds. So I play flute in the orchestra, and so certainly in our section there's sort of myself with a health background, we've got a physio, we've got some music teachers, someone who works at the Liverpool Philharmonic, we've got a pilot. So when would we all normally get in a room together? But we're great mates.
Yeah.
And then we play in a great section together, and so it's really fantastic for the community to be able to come together and make music. And we've put on some really big concerts. So we've played at the Liverpool Philharmonic Hall, and other really big things. So even though we're a community orchestra, we're a pretty professional outfit, actually, and I'm really proud of that. And I think I chair the committee there, as I say, but we've got a great leadership team around the orchestra. And then, so my best friend actually is the musical director of the orchestra, and he is also a professional musician, and got me into playing saxophone. So it was after I heard Phil play the saxophone, I ended up saying, "Oh, you'll have to teach me that." After a few glasses of wine, we're like, "Teach me that," and I want to get to grade 8 in a year, which is the highest level on music. So we did it, and so this was after university, and so then he had the unenviable job of teaching me jazz, and now I play in a number of his jazz big bands as well, which I just love, and it's a bit of fun out of work, and we get to play with a really great set of musicians and singers and stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of fun. Keeps the mind active outside of work as well, which is brilliant.
And obviously very talented. You're one of those annoying people who seem to pick up an instrument and straight away know what to do with it, which is I'm definitely not in that category. But actually, your sense of community and togetherness is really coming through, not just from your work, but obviously spare time as well. So, Kate, that was such a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us on Leadership Live, and thank you for sharing your insights today.
Oh, thank you, Doug. That's been a real pleasure.
Thanks so much. And of course, thanks to you viewers for tuning in. I hope there were some useful insights there to take back into your day job. That's all for now, but we'll see you again very soon. Until then, goodbye.